Good morning, good afternoon, welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by Yvonne Moynihan. Yvonne is the Chief Corporate and ESG Officer at Wizz Air. Wizz Air, as most of you know, is a very large European-based airline, originally headquartered in Budapest, but with four separate, airline operating companies, and I think a fleet of nearly 180 aircraft. So a big sizable fleet, and I assume sizable emissions that come with that. You're obviously speaking at the SAF Congress, which is fast approaching us in June. So welcome, Yvonne. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. And it's 181 aircraft as of today.
There's a lot of aircraft, a lot of people, a lot of emissions. But can you give us a little bit of background? I've seen your career. You've obviously been in aviation for some time. You're trained as a lawyer. From Dublin, and started your career with Ryanair and been in Vueling and now at Wizz. So in terms of your sort of view around, I guess, aviation sustainability, can you give us some of your thoughts and backgrounds to where we are, and I suppose as a dominant European airline, also have some sort of remarks around, I guess, the European approach to sustainability and I guess compliance regulation. Quite a lot
Sure.
there, but yeah.
Well, sustainability in aviation has become, obviously one of the hot topics in the last couple of years. And certainly low-cost airlines have demonstrated very strong sustainability policies and also exceptional results as well. So, for example, in Wizz Air, we have, a very clear sustainability strategy, which we like to, illustrate as building blocks. So with a short term, a medium term, and a long term. So in the short term, we're focusing on what is available now and technology and innovations that are currently available. So right now, aircraft technology is the number one solution. So during the pandemic, we invested in aircraft. So we have a very ambitious fleet renewal plan where we have A321ceo aircraft, and we are going to replace all of those with A321neo aircraft, which are, the most sustainable on the market in terms of reduction of fuel consumption and also noise emissions as well. I think we currently have about 50% of our fleet with the A321neo. And as a result of that, we have an average fleet age of 4.6 years, which I believe is the youngest in Europe. And in addition to that, we've had great success in the last year in particular, because we were recognized by CAPA, the Centre for Aviation, as the most environmentally sustainable airline globally.
Wow.
And in EMEA. And in addition to that, we were able to demonstrate a reduction in our emissions by 15%. So in 2022, we had a result of 55 grams of CO2 per passenger kilometer. So that's actually the lowest in Europe. Mm-hmm. And we have a target of 43 grams for 2030. So in that terms, we're far ahead of our competitors. So it's become a critical topic. And really at this stage, as I said, the short-term plan is fleet renewal. The long-term plan is hydrogen. And then to bridge that gap between now and the long term, really the focus is SAF. So I like to say that SAF is the holy grail, because really it's the next viable option of further decarbonisation.
Yeah, and we're obviously waiting, I guess, for legislation for I guess the European legislation coming in to sort of force, I guess, compliance or the acquisition of SAF. What is the availability of SAF like? We've seen various comments about that historically. It's been quite a slow-moving industry because of clearly the costs of producing the SAF components and bio-based SAFs are now potentially as you move to more e-fuels and hydrogen-based SAF. So, what are some of your thoughts around what is a transition and how the aircraft how you view that transition, and what's the sort of best pathway to increasing clean fuels in the aviation sector?
Sure. Well, as you've highlighted there, one of the key or two of the key limitations at the moment are availability and cost. So the price of SAF now is 3 to 5 times what conventional jet fuel is. So that's one issue. And of course, that becomes an issue for an ultra low cost carrier because, our focus is on being the lowest cost producer and keeping our unit costs down. And then the other problem is availability. So Wizz Air has 4 AOCs. One of them is based in Hungary, and that's the biggest. And we have very little availability of SAF in the area. So what we do is we engage in lobbying, and we discuss with local governments, local authorities, and local fuel producers to try and advocate for national SAF strategies, because we believe this is the best way forward in terms of ramping up production. Of course, we have the Refuel EU legislation, which I believe we have a deal from last night. Yes, from last night. So we have guaranteed blending mandates in place now. And of course, with the EU ETS legislation being agreed as well, there will be free allowances for SAF use as well. So now that we have the policy in place, we can start focusing on what funding can be available with the European Green Deal. And I think that matters will accelerate from here. So really at the moment within the EU, SAF production is driven by policy, which is different to the US, which has a focus on incentivizing and tax breaks. So it's this the carrot versus stick approach. So the EU is very much currently the stick approach, but that works because EU carriers are quite far ahead with their SAF strategies and with their sustainability policies in general. But we look forward to what type of funding will be available for oil producers so that they can start ramping up production now. And another thing that we have done at Wizz Air is just announced last week, we have invested in a SAF plant. So that plant will convert sludge to sustainable fuel in the future. And this is what, a lot of people in the industry are doing as well, because once airlines invest put equity in this production as well, this will also help with the ramp up of sustainable aviation fuel.
Is that based around fear of supply constraints and it being as a threat to the business in terms of needing to secure supply? Was that one of the drivers for the investment, or is it also about helping to scale the technology? Or
it's both. Very clearly, there's very little supply of SAF. If we were now to scramble around to get SAF, we wouldn't be able to fly planes for only a couple of days. I understand there's such limited availability of SAF because it's very expensive to produce. So by investing, you're helping up to scale up the technology, reduce the cost, and then if funding is available as well, that will ramp up production even more.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned obviously the fleet being the youngest and you're most energy efficient, I guess. In terms of moving beyond that, are there other operational aspects where you're looking to improve to reduce emissions? And I guess that is around making sure that the plane is full essentially, and that you're are there any other things that Wizz Air are doing that may be different on the operational side in terms of sustainability?
Sure, yes. Well, of course, flight efficiency is another aspect that we can utilize in the short term. So we would employ certain procedures, such as single engine taxing, for example, or there are en route efficiencies that you can have in relation to flight optimization of fuel and pathways. So that's one thing, and we're constantly looking at new ways to innovate in that regard. The other thing is, as you mentioned, high load factors. So as a ULCC carrier, that's one of our main KPIs, filling the plane. So we have a very high load factor, and the more density you have in the aircraft as well, the more efficient it is.
Yeah. Understood. I mean, and in terms of the sort of going back, I guess, to the legislation landscape, you mentioned the US and tax breaks. You mentioned that in Europe, looking for more national strategies. Does that not risk having a patchwork quilt of different regulatory environments, which become very complex, obviously, when you're running an international international airline?
Well, of course, we have the overall regulatory framework with the EU legislation and the EU Fit for 55 files. But on a national level, what governments can do is more related to funding. So, for example, we already have this now with different airports, different countries have different taxes and charges. So, it's hard to reform those. So, for example, in Hungary, we have an environmental tax. And essentially, the more environmentally or better you perform environmentally, the less charges you will have to pay. So that's an idea that we like to socialize with other regulators, saying, that those airlines who are decarbonizing faster and showing better environmental performance, they should be awarded in terms of charges. So basically, the polluter pays. So whoever is the most polluting is paying the most charges, and whoever is the least polluting is paying less charges. And I think that's a really good way to incentivize airlines to be even more environmentally conscious.
Yeah, understood. And in terms of the airline operating companies, I understand you've got your operations in Abu Dhabi, and you'll be there shortly, I think, to speak on sustainability. In terms of what other people and viewers of this interview can reach out to you. I mean, you're looking to secure SAF supplies across the various different markets. What can we do to help accelerate, Wizz Air and its pathway to decarbonisation?
Well, I think that the UAE is certainly, and the Middle East in general, are going to be focused on SAF in the future. And of course, the UAE is hosting COP28 this year in November. And so this is really a crucial topic that's on the table. So we have our airline in Abu Dhabi. And of course, we want to engage with other airlines in the region as well. And there, as I understand, there is no policy or blending mandate within the EU, but a lot of the local airlines, want to take social responsibility and start planning and having policies for sustainable aviation fuel. So I think it would be great for suppliers in the region, for people developing in this area to have discussion and start the dialogue, because really this is an area where the whole industry needs to get together, and every player in the ecosystem needs to be cooperative and collaborative together, because it's not something that airlines can do alone, and because of the Paris Agreement and the clear need to decarbonize. Collaboration is the only way forward.
Yeah, indeed. Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Yvonne, for sharing your thoughts today. It's been fascinating to chat to you and get your perspectives and understanding, of where we are on the sort of pathway to decarbonisation. You obviously are going to be speaking at the SAF Congress, which is, as I mentioned, happening in June in the Netherlands. We've got a great audience building up. We look forward to helping you on your journey and connecting you with as many partners as possible. So many thanks, Yvonne, and also like to wish success for your Irish rugby team this autumn in the World Cup.
Thanks, Nadine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.